Okay, I'll jump in though. We'll get started. No. Nope, nope. But I will.
Yes. There you go.
Uh, okay. Well, hi everybody. My name is Marissa Hellowell. I think everybody knows me. If not, I work with curriculum and instruction based in Fort Worth. So today, the title of my presentation was originally AI Proof or AI Partner, with the intent of doing a little bit of a workshop. But then, with all that's transpired over the last spring, 2 months with I decided just to zoom way out and just talk about it because one, we only have 30 minutes, and two, there's just a lot going on in the world of AI that I thought it would be better just to talk about some big ideas. So we're going to briefly touch on environmental, economic, and ethical impacts guiding instructors with our little bit of time together. Okay, so right now, if we could zoom out, um, typically we just look at AI in our classrooms, right, for teaching in our students. But I wanted us to look more about the role of AI kind of in our world right now. And I would say the best way to describe it would be the Wild West in that there's a lot of unpredictability. We don't know where AI is going. We don't know what will happen tomorrow because every day it's growing exponentially, right? And then also, it's a very unregulated space. So, what does that mean? It's not defined, just like the Wild West. There was no established civilizations. So, therefore, there was no government, there was no guiding laws. It was more or less survival of the fittest, and each day determined its own guidelines, right, and regulations. So in AI right now, we have unpredictability, unregulated, and there's also this incredible growth. So I think the guiding question for kind of what we're talking about today is how can we be responsible instructors, but also responsible citizens? So when I first jumped into AI, I was super duper excited about it. I love it. And I went all in. But then, like anything new, you learn more about it. And so I would say right now in my evolution of thoughts on AI, I'm at the cautious stage. And so that's kind of what's guiding my presentation today. So once again, big picture, I just wanted us to look outside of the classroom, and I think students kind of need to be aware of this too, is what are the economic effects? And we're talking about that. We hear it in the news. There's definitely a range. So right now we have some people saying, like Anthropic, that oh yeah, this is going to incredibly boost our GDP index. It's going to have exponential growth and money-making opportunities, right? But then at that same time, that also includes automation. So for any of those like low-level jobs, that means a lot of low-level jobs could be disappearing. And so that's both that opportunity mixed with the displacement. Um, but I will say an MIT professor, Darren Acemoglu, he believes it's much more modest than is being anticipated, meaning there's kind of going to be this AI bubble, but it's going to burst, and that it's not going to be as economically life-changing as we think. But really, at the end of the day, it's too early to make any accurate predictions. Nobody knows. And I think with anything, it just depends on our perspective. We could have a doomsday approach, or we can look at the glass as more half full. It just depends on the person. But for me, I found it just depends on the day. That changes. So really, my guidance for students and for people that fear automation and losing jobs is at the end of the day, AI is only as good as the people feeding it and the people using it. So therefore, challenge students, hey, you need to be knowledgeable. You need to have a skill set. You need to have certifications. And that will help them be indispensable and much more secure in their place in the future. So that's economic, just big perspective. But then I wanted to have a little peek at environmental because there's a lot going on right now with AI under the radar, especially in Texas. In Texas, Microsoft and OpenAI are both working on a $10 billion infrastructure out in Abilene, building data centers. It's called Stargate, the Stargate project. There's also Google's expanding in Ellis County and Haskell County. They're all more or less getting energy from their private power grids, but it's inevitable in time that these will connect to our state grids. Now, we know what happened just a few years ago with the freeze in our grids, and we were wiped out for 2 weeks. So that's just something to be reflective on. A lot of counties and communities are kind of like, not knowing this is happening other than seeing the infrastructure being built. And so therefore, citizens are starting to become more active and going like, whoa, hold on a second. Has this been approved? Has this run through proper legislation? So all of that to say, those data centers also use high energy. They also use a lot of water, and there's a lot of e-waste, carbon dioxide. So not to be doomsday and say shut it down, but with anything new, hey, maybe we should be cautious, be aware. And I think our students need to know of this too. Even when I was developing this, I thought, okay, how much can I just write a paper and talk about it versus relying on AI, because AI makes it way more fun. It makes way more professional slides, terms. And so we're all becoming somewhat dependent on AI. And so just adding that environmental reflection into that, that we need to look at sustainable AI and making sure as we reflect more how we grow. Are we just involved in a race to be the best and the fastest, or are we really being reflective in our growth? So that's our environmental. Chowsky, I have a list of references, but yes, if you look at Chowsky et al., 2026, it's an article. Infographic. No, that was from a research study. I'm not sure which college it came out of, but I do have the reference. Citation. So where we're going to sit and just talk a little bit about then the third question is the ethical question. So this just more or less is a question, is AI a good or a bad thing? We face this throughout history, right? Is the internet a good or a bad thing? Are firearms a good or a bad thing? For our society, for looking at war and the nuclear race, you know, where we are today, just determining what place will AI have in our society, right? It always seems to be human invention throughout history, always seems to come at a cost, right? We live in this amazing country of the United States, but at what cost? If we think of the Native Americans, if we think of the slave trade, of all of our growth, all of our development, at the same time with human growth and expansion, there always seems to be some cost. And so here we are again with AI. What do? Do we stick our head in the sand? Do we just fully embrace AI to compete in our global markets? What is the wisest choice? And I think this is just where, while we fully embrace and learn new skills as we do with technology, because as instructors and faculty, we want to stay ahead, we also need to take heed, we need to read, we need to contemplate, and just move ahead with caution. So a few things just that we can reflect on as faculty is, one, where do you stand? Do you fully forbid it? Are you more in the stick your head in the sand and ignore it? Or more of an integration approach? And I think it just takes the responsibility of the instructor to kind of take time and identify your own personal beliefs. So, what do you believe? And you can't at this point really ignore it because we're at a point where AI is here, it's not going away. Students are using it and will use it regardless of what we say. So how are we going to approach it in the classroom depends on personal beliefs. So it just is the responsibility of faculty to really acknowledge your stance. So some things like, where do you stand with AI? How much have you actually experienced AI? Because I don't think you can have a belief with something if you haven't experienced it, right? So making sure you're using generative AI personally, exploring what it can do, using the tools, and then asking yourself more or less that big question, how willing are we to change? Because the world is changing, and are we just going to stay with the same way we do things, or are we going to be reflective, experience AI, and then accommodate it or assimilate it to our life? So then what is the instructor's roles? So overall, these would be like my three little suggestions as we navigate this Wild West. And one, I think the most important thing we can do with our students is be open with them, like just communicate. There's nothing worse than having an unstated expectation, right? Have you ever been in a situation, whether it's a classroom with a boss, and you either get reprimanded or in trouble, but at the same for something that was never communicated to you? And I think with AI, that's where, yes, we can add that statement to our syllabus, but it has to be way more than that. It needs to be something we talk about in the classroom, so that students have no doubt what the expectations are. Secondly, I think we need to model for our students. We can't assume students know how to use AI. They know how to use it. They're going to use it according to their standards and their ethical beliefs, but as our responsibility, what do we expect them to do with AI in our classrooms? And so what better way to do that than to model? Meaning generative AI for writing. Okay, write a paper with them, show them how to use Grammarly, make it an old school, step by step, we're going to do this whole group. Another way for me personally would be like lesson planning, writing a lesson plan with students as a lecture. So I'm showing them, here's AI tools. This is how we can do it. This is what's acceptable. And then this is what crosses the line. That's not acceptable, which would be that blatant copying and pasting, using words that aren't yours and stating that they are. But I think having those experiences, because what students do, and it's not students, it's human nature, if it is not stated, then we take advantage. It's like, well, you never said that. And so we want to be as explicit as possible. And then thirdly, I think the most important is give them your why. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you have that stance on AI? Whether they agree with you or not, at least if you share their why, you're inviting them into understanding and then giving them an opportunity to respect that. And then it also makes them much more accountable if they are going to cross that line. It's much more unethical because they clearly know what is expected of them. And so just those three things: clear communication, modeling AI usage, and then giving them your why, but then I would have them develop theirs. What do they believe about AI? After maybe using it, implementing it, that could even be some great research. Then at the end of the semester, really kind of forming their own little philosophy of, okay, how has your view of AI changed? And what do you think about it? Especially when we look at economically, environmentally, and ethically. And so for the next 5 minutes, I just want us to pick one of three sources to reflect on. Okay, there's two quotes here. There is also a LinkedIn post by KVS Delete. So I'm going to click on this, or maybe I'm not. And what I want to do is just show you something that occurred recently in the world of AI. I'm going to stop sharing. Well, actually, I won't. What happened recently is with Anthropic, one of the lead security analysts quit. And he wrote a letter explaining why he was leaving Anthropic as the head of security. And it's pretty incredible, the post. So if you just search KVS delete Anthropic resignation, you can find a letter, and you can also see this response to the letter. But more or less, what it talks about is there's supposedly a mass exodus of those in security, those working with AI, because they're looking into the abyss and it's a little overwhelming of what the potential is. Another little thing that happened recently, if Anthropic was trying to come up with an agreement with the US government of using AI. The government wanted unregulated, that's the only term I can think of right now, access. Anthropic was like, whoa, no, you cannot have absolute access to Anthropic, meaning weapons of mass destruction can't be automated, things like that. So after 2 days of debating, more or less, they were shut down, and ChatGPT, why am I not thinking of the name right now? OpenAI came in and was like, sure, we'll give it to you full access. And they got the contract like the next day. So that's what we're kind of looking at when we're talking about ethics in AI. So I just want us to either pick one of those quotes or look up KVS delete. I'm going to pull it up and just look at his statement when it comes to AI in the current age. So I'm just going to be quiet for 2 or 3 minutes so that we can just have some reflections on what I said so far, and then picking one of these quotes to reflect on. And then I'm going to ask you to share out. Okay, so I pulled up KVS Delete's reflection. Anthropic's head of safety just resigned. And this gentleman was off LinkedIn, jumped back on because he just wanted to share out his reflections. Because Mrinank Sharma, the head of security for Anthropic, was left with a quote from William Stafford. And the quote was, there's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it does not change. And the thread he's referring to is your principles, your values, the reason you're building Okay, and his comment was, but the thread, your principles, your values, the reasons you're building, think of AI, that shouldn't change. And right now, in the age of AI, holding on to that thread has never been harder or more important. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. And what he's talking about is when they live in a landscape of quarterly cycles where they're constantly under this strict competition to compete. His last words were, don't ever let go of the thread. So does anybody have any comments or reflections on either those words and what he was meaning by them, or on the quotes that I shared from the slide? And those in Stephenville, please join in on the conversation as well, if you would like to. Any thoughts? Because I have lots, but I would like to hear yours.
I think no matter what you're doing, you have to stay to who you are and not let things get ahead and get caught up in innovation and forgetting who you are. I think because that first quote kind of goes along with the environmental side of it too. Like, don't get so caught up in the innovation that you're forgetting things that matter. But we do that.
Right.
We tend to get ahead of ourselves.
Right. Yeah, good point.
Innovation, there's values, principles, whatever.
Very good. Did you have any thoughts?
Dr. Hallowell?
Yes.
We really can't hear them very well when they're speaking, so we missed, I caught some of what she said, but I think we missed some of what she said too.
What did I say? Yeah, I think it's with anything, with innovation or anything, we get ahead of ourselves, whether it's our values, our principles, our morals, or even environmental, that we get so excited or caught up in the innovation side of it that we forget to stay centered and focused on what really matters. And we have to find that balance. So that kind of goes with the first quote, I think.
Thank you.
Did you? Sure. Okay, we have another one sharing.
I like the first quote because with AI, everything's so accessible now. We can ask ourselves, like, are we truly learning? Or are we just kind of yeah, or like being lazy too, just asking AI for that.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Any thoughts or reflections in Stephenville?
Well, I also agree with the first one. I'm also thinking about the fact it's kind of like a Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia was created and it's like this resource you can look things up, but it's only reflects the people that put the information in there, right? So you may be trying to gain all this knowledge, but some of it might not be absolutely accurate too. So you've got to checks and balances from that as well.
Yeah, good. And going back to kind of the Wild West was a scary place, no doubt about it. If you wanted to head west and be a pioneer, that was extremely exciting, but it came with a lot of uncharted territory. And that's where we are, right? Uncharted territory. And I think we can be blissfully ignorant, which is fun because then we don't have to worry. I love people that don't worry, but I can be either way. I can go both ways. But I think one thing we need to reflect on is kind of the history, right, of technology. When the internet came, there was a lot of fear, but it brought a ton of good, but also at a cost, right? So if we think of how much in the right hands, it cured diseases and saved lives, but in the wrong hands, it brought a lot of negativity. It brought a lot of theft, a lot of destruction. So once again, it really depends with these tools on whose hands are they in. And so what can we conclude from this? I just think, once again, going back to what Dilip was saying, and also the Anthropic security lead as he stepped away, is that we have to hold on to that thread, meaning what are our values, what are our ethics, and involve those in education. I'm not saying the Ten Commandments. There's a very healthy, beautiful line in the US of a separation of church and state, and it should be that way, right? But at the same time, that doesn't mean removing ethics from society. Like, I love how in Japanese and Korean cultures, they have this Confucianism. It's just embedded in culture where they're taught how to think of others. They're taught how to be kind. They're taught how to share, how to think collectively, versus a very individualistic tendency. And I think we are caught a little bit right now in this competition. Every single one of us, whether it's making more money, writing more articles, who can accomplish the most? I mean, and AI is fabulous. It helps us, but then at the same time, it makes life even busier. And when we are working with our students, stepping back and taking time to not just teach them the tools, but hey, what are some of these ethical questions we need to think about? Because it can be a tool for good or a tool for bad. And we need to make sure we're helping develop, right, informed citizens who are going to hopefully use whatever we teach them for good out in the great big yonder, right? But that means we have to take time to stop ourselves, be present, and really engage them, connect with our students. And at the end of it, show the heart that we care about them. We're not just instructing for ourselves, for our own paycheck, for our own growth, for our own needs and wants, but we are here for them. And if we want to invest in them and we want to educate them for their better, for their good,